seeing my lights come through like a halo. Yeah, thanks for reaching out, buddy. I appreciate it.
No problem. I remember I said something a while back, and I'm kind of taking a break because I'm kind of burned out.
I get it.
And
Yeah.
and like, I mean, like, I don't want to quit or anything. It's just, I other podcasters do like seasons, and I've made the joke, and I'm like, what's a season? Like, I've been going for like 2 years straight, and or almost like a year, I guess, like a year and a half for Blake's Buzz. But yeah, I was like, man, I was just kind of like, life and all that other bullshit. And I was like, I'm taking, like towards the end of November, I was like, I'm taking the rest of the year off. And then, of course, I get like the, you miss it, right? Which is good when you're feeling burned out and you take a step back, and then you're like, ooh, like I kind of missed this. And then I saw Volume 1 was coming out, and I was like, oh shit, like I wanted to talk to David before Volume 1 dropped. So yeah, no, I'm stoked. I just think it's so cool, man. Like, this is I talked to you once on that other podcast, and this is the second time you've been on Blake's Buzz, and it's cool. Just like, the last time we were talking about OZ issue 2, while that campaign was live, and now we're talking about your first Marvel trade. Like, that's huge. That's like a huge, huge milestone.
Still hasn't quite sunk in yet.
I bet, man. I bet it's like a gnarly feeling.
It's wild.
Did you get like, does Marvel do comps? Like, do you get comps from them?
Yes, I do get comps from them. And then I also have, I also buy extra copies.
Nice.
So yeah, it was wild getting to see that thing.
Yeah, because I would you've already got them, I would imagine, right? Like, if you got like,
yeah, I managed to get some of my copies a little early, and yeah, it's pretty incredible. It reads really well. I was really curious to see kind of how the whole thing read in trade, and I think it feels like a really kind of meaty trade. If you thought seeing it in singles was hefty, kind of getting our first arc in one collected form, it really does feel like a year's worth of storytelling that we really kind of worked hard to compress into an arc.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's, I think it fits really well, especially for that title. I always say they don't call us subtle Avengers.
I like that.
And yeah, I think we really kind of, I think the directive that I've always operated under was really trying to crank everything to 11 for the whole series. And yeah, I feel like that first trade really, I think for people who missed our series and or were trade waiting and are waiting to hear what the hubbub is about, I think they're I don't know if they're ready for this this kind of roller coaster, but it's gonna be a really exciting roller coaster of a read.
Yeah, and I mean, and it does. The trade reads great, right? Those first 5 issues, and then right after that, man, it's a whole new, like, that. The arc 2 is really exciting too, which we'll talk about that. I'll do the quick intro, and then we'll hit the ground running. I'm gonna do. It's going to be a podcast, and I'll have it out by Wednesday. And I'm also going to go ahead, and I've been posting the chats to YouTube as well, just to kind of like get extra listens. So I'm sure it'll really bother you if like other people hear about your awesome book and want to go buy it.
Not at all. Whatever you got to do, I'm totally down for it.
Sweet. All right. Buzz, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another episode of Blake's Buzz, and we've got a guest. He's been on before. He's done Kickstarter. He's had awesome indie books with Aftershock, other publishers that we may not want to name, but his books were still really cool from them. Now he's at Marvel. He's written an Avengers team. He's written the actual Avengers on the Marvel Unlimited app. He's written Elektra. He's written Moon Knight. He's written the Fantastic Four. David Pepose has been at Marvel for like a day, and he's already touching all these different properties. He's the Marvel puppeteer. This is a marvelous chat with David Pepose, back again on Blake's Buzz. David, how are you doing, man? I'm so excited to talk about your new Big 2 life.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know how you top that intro, man. I think I need to hire you as my hype man. No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back in the show, and yeah, I'm thrilled to be talking about Savage Avengers and my other Marvel work. Yeah, it's been a real whirlwind. I started working with Marvel. It was just before July 4th of 2021, so I'm marking about a year and a half.
So you had
And
to be quiet for a while.
yeah,
How hard? Ooh, how hard was that?
it was very
Because you do a
difficult.
lot of interviews. You do a lot of, especially with the OZ and the Kickstarters and stuff. Like you, oh man, I would, if I was in your position, I would be like the Mark Ruffalo, like accidentally telling everybody that like, wait till you see the next Avengers, everybody dies. Like I would be like, it would be so hard, like not to talk about that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it really it was a big test of willpower, especially we had initially when they had first hired me on to work on the book, we were originally talking about a February launch, and then as stuff started to shift, we pushed the runway down to a May launch. And so, boy, let me tell you, I mean, there were a couple of months that it was killing me where I was like, oh, are we going to announce in November? No. Okay, we're going to announce in December? No. Okay, January? No. Okay, finally, February, we're going to announce. And yeah, it was really, it was wild. But yeah, it really has been kind of a crazy year and a half, and I've been really excited to be working with Marvel, and I'm excited for some of the stuff we've got coming in the pipeline in 2023. Some fun stuff that has not been announced yet. But yeah, I mean, it's the astronaut job, in a lot of ways, and honestly, it's knock on wood gone. Honestly, as well as I could have hoped. I think I always was a little nervous about making the jump to the big two.
Mhm.
I think I was always concerned. I never want to be the guy who thinks he can run before he can walk. And no, honestly, it's been kind of an interesting leveling up. I think, at least as far as how I feel as a storyteller and as a creator, I feel like I was describing it to another pro a month or so back. It kind of feels like my residency a little bit, like a medical residency. Like they really do kind of they're throwing me at everything just to kind of see if I can handle it. And there are times where it's a little intimidating,
Yeah, I
a
bet.
little anxiety inducing, but I kind of take the beat and I think about it and I just say, well, what's the best thing that I can write at this moment, knowing that no one would have thrown me at this if they didn't think I was up for it. And it's worked out pretty well so far. Fantastic Four and Avengers Unlimited and Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood. And yeah, so I'm very excited sort of for the next opportunities that are coming in 2023. And I'm excited for readers to get to see what's come down the pipeline.
Same, because I won't lie, I love your indie work.
Yeah.
Scout. I reviewed and loved and adored and interviewed you about Scout's Honor
Yeah.
and the OZ, and so like and finding you from your other indie stuff, the going to the chapel and Spencer and Locke, like
Yeah.
like a lot of us, that's where we found you, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where that's kind of where you started, and you've always been a great writer with great ideas,
Thank you.
and it's really cool to see that play out in characters that you don't own, right? And
Yeah.
I've always kind of been interested in that, about that transition, right? Because when
Sure.
in the indie world, you can do whatever you want, right? Like in Scout's Honor, like these characters, they were all yours, right?
Right.
You could do anything you want, you could kill anyone you want, you could make anyone say or do or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
there's no room to judge or well, I mean, nerds will always judge because they're never happy, but like there's no area for someone to be like, well, Sue Storm would never say that, or something like
Sure.
that. And so when you get into these, and they didn't just give you like an offshoot of like Marvel properties. Like you started in the, like, Elektra as Daredevil is hot right now,
Yeah.
right? Conan is hot everywhere, not just
Yeah.
in Marvel. And then you did the Moon Knight the anthology part, with right off the cusp of the series and stuff. Like, and so like, and then of course, you did the Fantastic Four. And so like you've touched on like every almost major Marvel property other than the X-Men already, like in your fresh Marvel career. So what is it like as a writer going in when your babies aren't your babies anymore, even though like they're still your babies, like you're a great babysitter and you're like I'm not going to drop the baby, everything's going to be fine, like like I'll feed it, I'll change it, and everything will be good. But like as a writer, when you go from indie, like an indie to big two established properties, like did you have to change any kind of like how you approach the narratives, the scripting, stuff like that?
It's a great question. And my answer actually might be a little anticlimactic in that I don't see a huge difference. I think for me, I treat the analogy of treating every character like your baby. That's exactly how I approach everything, whether it's my indie work or my licensed work. And I think for me to kind of tweak your analogy a little bit, you have your babies and you're doing your best to raise them right. And once the book is out and is finished, the baby is sort of walked out the door. That's sort of you sent them off to college or the working world. They've grown up essentially, and that sort of works within the confines of however long your story is. So for example, like the OZ. Dorothy and the Tin Soldier and the Prince of Lions and Jack Pumpkinhead and the Scarecrow and Toto, they're all my babies. And they will be my babies until the last issue comes out. And so I think I feel the same way about working on characters in Marvel, is that while I'm writing them, they're my baby. And until I'm finished writing them, they're still my baby. And I think that kind of keeps the emotional consistency going for it. You always want to see the best in these characters. You always want to find, what do you love about these characters, and then figure out how to show that to a stranger. And I think I do think though, like, there's certainly different expectations. When you're doing something that's licensed versus even if you're doing something that's like public domain, like the Wizard of Oz, or doing sort of a parody like Calvin and Hobbes, like we did with Spencer and Locke. I do think, there's of course expectations, but I do think it's not as narrow as you might think. I think if you love the characters for who they are, the personality often will shine through. And then there are ways, we did this a little bit in Savage Avengers, where you're like, okay, like what's a way to take a different angle on a character in terms of their powers? I think that is something that fans usually like. Some are a little more purist about it, but I think mostly fans have responded pretty well to ways that we've tweaked, powers for Weapon H or Cloak and Dagger, or even Black Knight. We've tweaked him a little bit. I think people tend to like that if you stay true to the characters themselves. And that's something that I've been really working hard to try to do. And I feel particularly proud of, I love what we've been doing in Savage Avengers. I know that the expectations might not be as high because a lot of those characters aren't as well known to readers. But I feel like Fantastic Four was something that I felt really proud of how we kind of rose to the occasion with that one. Where we're able to take a different angle on Reed Richards and Sue Storm, but in a way that felt organic to those characters. It didn't feel like it was so wildly out of left field, which is where I think a lot of fans can cry foul. But I think, I don't know, it's kind of fun. Especially for me, I grew up reading the big two. I think one of my very first comics. I remember my first comics were all Marvel books. I remember Infinity War #2. That was sort of the book that made me realize, like, oh, all these characters know each other. I knew, like, oh, Captain America and Wolverine and Iron Man and the Fantastic Four and Spidey and all the Avengers, and so it's kind of nice to like revisit them as an adult, having sort of my own life experiences as an adult, and then being able to sort of write that love letter to my childhood with these characters. And I'm not getting tired of that anytime soon. You know, and
Well, you
I
better
really,
not be, because I want more. Like I want this proposed Marvel takeover to keep going, man. Like
you and me
you're
both.
on a roll.
It's been really fun, and I will say that I've really enjoyed. Marvel's given me a lot of latitude, which I really appreciate. That I don't. I think it would be easy for a publisher to say, well, we want you to kind of hew towards a house style and kind of veer away from what makes your voice unique.
Mm.
And I've never been pushed away from my instincts. I think if anything, they've been really encouraging when I say, hey, like, you know, what about like, you know, when I pitched Savage Avengers, I said, you know, I'd love to. What if we did Conan versus the Terminator in the Hyperborean age, but with a Deathlock instead of a Terminator, and then we can sort of for you know the then we can have like a Terminator 1 in the Hyperborean age, and then we can sort of shift to a Terminator 2 in the far future of 2099. And I've you know between that and things like Die Hard in the Baxter Building with Fantastic Four and the things I've done with Avengers Unlimited and Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood. It feels really great because it feels like all the way I built my career as an indie creator. I'm just able to sort of take that same toolkit and apply it to the Marvel universe. And Marvel has been really supportive and really excited with the stuff that I've been pitching them. So yeah, so more cool stuff to come that you'll be seeing in 2023.
Awesome. I feel so silly now because I did not. I mean, I see the Conan versus the Terminator, but the
Yeah.
second arc of Savage Avengers is totally Terminator 2 because they have the freaking arm. I totally I totally missed that. I just so I read volume 1, but I was behind and caught up. You know, I caught up to prep for our interview this morning. I read the new issues of Savage Avengers, and like, dude, you're so good. You're so at home already. And this is like still, you know, I know you're 7 issues in, going on 8, and you have more scripts already for this, and sounds like future stuff too. So I know like it's not like new to you because you've been working on this for a long time, but as consumers, right? It's you're not even, you know, 10 issues in. So in that sense, you're still kind of like new in the Marvel world, and everything like it feels like you've been here for a really, really long time. And like it's mind blowing. And the team I've always liked the Savage Avengers title. Just like West Coast, because it's like it's an Avengers book, it's a team book, it's cool, but it gives you guys this isn't like silly like West Coast is sometimes, but it's at times outlandish, right? It's so big and preposterous, but you make it work, right? And how you bring these characters together. When I reviewed the issue 1, like, you know, I just as a new way to like kick off a team book, like the way you do jump cuts and your cuts progress into the narrative too. Like you're very good at structuring. And I think it's kind of risky too, because and again, like, you know, great creators take risks, right? But the way you cut like back and forth to future or past, or and again, that it correlates so great with like the time jumps and the craziness. But it's never like jarring. It's like maybe jarring for half a second, but then you're like, oh, like, you know, it takes like a panel or two to orient you. And it's cool because it feels like we are, as the audience, being jostled around in the time stream, right? And it's fun and exciting, and like any great comic, like, you know, you turn the page and you don't really know what's going to happen ever. And then but it makes sense too. Like when you think about it, you're like, oh yes, okay, boom, like I get this now. And Savage Avengers is great at that. Like I just it's so I don't know that I've really read a Marvel book like that. Like it's cool to have this new voice at Marvel. Not a new, like, you're not a new voice in comics. You know, you've planted your heels, like you're here. We know you, you know, but you know, like your big 2 premiere. I mean, I look at other creatives, man, and like people that have made that jump from indie to big 2, like you know, it's just some had rockier starts, you know, and or you know, or maybe did like, I mean, even when they brought in Jim Lee with Claremont, like Jim Lee did like a couple issues here and a couple issues there. They didn't just like, they're like, X-Men's yours, take it over, baby. And like,
Right.
you have this whole team, this whole, and like I don't know, man, I don't know how you did it. I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you were noticed. Cause like I said, I love your indie work. And I think Marvel needs more of that. Like you know, fresh voices are important, you know, across the whole spectrum of comics, indie and big too. And so it was really cool to like see you go from like point A to point B to point badass, right? And like and it's just awesome. And I'm so excited for like more issues and like this future 2099 stuff. Like it's amazing. The Deathlock twist that I won't, even though like it's old news, I don't want to spoil it because I'm gonna, you know, I want to hype volume 1 and have people like new, you know, I don't want to spoil anything for like new readers for you, but when we find out who this Deathlock is, like that's one of my favorite Marvel creators, dude. And I was like totally on board with that. I was like, oh my God, yes, like ooh, like it just like the hairs on my neck like stood up, man. I felt the electricity of like great comic booking. And
I'm really glad that people seem to respond well to that twist. Because you don't want to spoil it. I won't spoil it here either. But yeah, that was something that my editor and I, Tom Brevoort, I talked about that fairly early on, was that Deathlock could be anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I had pitched a name for Deathlock that I had actually wanted to be a Deathlock for a long time. And Tom rightly said, well, you know, like that's fine, but you could there's probably somebody else out there who's like a little more additive, like who has like powers and so I thought about it for a little while, and I then it kind of like hit me like a lightning bolt, and I was like, Tom, what do you think about this guy as our Deathlock? We treat him with the utmost respect. You know, like I'm a big fan of the character. In fact, if you look up that character's Wikipedia page, you might see a quote from me on it from his first issue. So, and yeah, people seem to have really responded well to that, which I appreciate. And it's been kind of fun writing that character in a very different way, in a way that I don't think I would have ever expected. I think though, to get to your earlier point, I mean, you know, I think the thing that I've been really fortunate and really grateful for, you know, you're saying I'm glad they noticed you. And what's funny is, and Tom has written about this in his newsletters, which if you haven't checked out his Substack, you really should subscribe to it. I think it's a really, if you want to know kind of how the industry works behind the scenes, Tom is sort of a must read newsletter. I read it every week it comes out because I want to learn more.
Brevoort?
Yeah, Tom Brevoort. Yeah. And the thing is, he said it in his newsletter. I've been in contact with Tom since my very first book came out, Spencer and Locke. And the thing is that for those who don't know me, you know, I spent a decade as a reviewer. I was the reviews editor at Newsarama for over a decade. And that wound up being kind of a double-edged sword for me. On the one hand, I think it was a great boot camp. You know, it made me kind of be forced to look at comics and figure out like, what do I like? What don't I like? How do I articulate that? How do I incorporate the things I like into my own toolkit? And how do I kind of avoid other people's mistakes? So in that sense, it was helpful. But I think on the downside, you know, what happens when you become a longtime reviewer and one who is not going to sort of someone who's going to approach it with a tough but fair mindset, which is how I always try to approach it, is you might rub some people the wrong way. And there's also, I think, a worry that, you know, it's sort of those who can't do.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, maybe I think there are a lot of reviewers out there, and not to denigrate any of the amazing reviewers out there, but I think there are plenty of reviewers out there who it is a little bit of armchair quarterbacking, that like if you had to put them in the same situation where you have to turn in a script in this level of time, I'm not sure they would be able to deliver the goods at the level that, like, you know, and I understand that, like, it's one of those things. There's so much I didn't know about the industry when I was a reviewer, and this is coming off of, I was a DC intern when I started. Like, there's only so much theory that you can absorb through osmosis without kind of putting it into practice and realizing like where the distortion lies. So anyway, that was a roundabout way of saying that I think there were a lot of people, a lot of editors out there who were just like, oh, well, you know, this guy, he can write reviews, but, you know, does he have what it takes to be a creator? And so I actually, looking back on it, I'm really grateful for that, because like I said, this already feels kind of like my medical residency. You know, it's intense. It's, you know, it's a lot of late nights, a lot of long hours, which I love, and I appreciate that. But I don't know if I would have been able to hack it if I had done this with just Spencer and Locke under my belt. You know, I had to go through a lot of different crucibles to kind of get to where I'm at. You know, I had to do 2 volumes of Spencer and Locke. I had to do Go Into the Chapel, you know, despite that kind of being an uphill fight because it's direct market counter programming. I, you know, had to do a Kickstarter for the OZ, 2 of them. I'm packing the second one right now. You know, doing Scouts Honor at Aftershock with Mike Martz, you know, who Mike Martz and Christina Harrington, who are both, you know, former Marvel editors. So, you know, just showing that I could do the work, you know, on top of, like, you know, a bunch of different anthology stories, all that combined. I think Tom rightly realized, like, oh, okay, he's not going away. Like, he's got the staying power to do this, and he's logged in the hours that we could trust him with something like Savage Avengers. And I, every time I attack a script now, I say to myself, well, I don't want that faith to go, you know, unrewarded. I try to leave it all out in the field for that. But I think without that level of experience, I'm not sure I could have hacked it. And I know that as a creator, I've got lots of room to grow, and I'm really excited to keep logging into the hours to do that. But I do think that there are creators who, you know, they can get thrown into the deep end of the pool, and then they're sort of judged against the same standards as people who have had a long time to perfect their craft, and many chances to perfect their craft, even with books that may not have, you know, stuck the landing the way they would have liked for it to. And that's where I'm kind of like, I'm really glad that I had more experience before I went into this, because I was able to kind of learn the learning curve a little bit before I was sort of put in this primetime position, and able to make my mistakes earlier so I could learn from them now.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think, and I agree with a lot of that too, just because you've been, you know, you've done direct market, you've done Kickstarter. I also think that your Kickstarter work and how used to, well, and you have to do it with indie stuff too, but how used to like marketing yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting that you're still doing that with your Marvel work, because like a lot of big 2 people don't. They're just like, I got this book coming out, pre-order it, thanks, it'll be out next month. And where you're on your social media and you're continuously reminding people, like, hey, like, Elektra's trending, I wonder why. Oh, by the way, I have a book with Elektra in it. And or when you know, remind people of the new issues coming out. Like, a lot of big 2 writers don't do that, you know, like, or they'll just like, or they'll retweet an AIPT article or something, you know. And so like,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But I think like that's where your kind of Kickstarter roots are also like helping propel your new Marvel books, and also just like the continuous pitching of like, when you said you were writing Fantastic Four, I was like, okay, like, done. And then you pitch it as like this, it's Die Hard in the Baxter Building, and I was like, oh my God, like, and it totally is, and it's so good. And you write Sue Storm, you write all the family wonderfully, but like the care you gave to Susan, like, and just giving her the spotlight. And we should just know by now that when Reed locks himself in a fucking room, nothing ever ends well, right? He does this every now and then, and it goes astronomically bad. But he continues to make this mistake. But anyway, you like did the first family justice. You remind me of when Chip Zdarsky did the when he did the Grimm and the Ben and Johnny, the 2-for-1.
The Marvel 2-in-1, yeah.
And like I wanted so badly for him to take over Fantastic Four, and a lot of us thought like that was his kind of like prelude to a Fantastic Four run, right?
Yeah.
And then it ended up going to Slott, and I love Dan Slott too, so that was cool. But I feel the same way where I like when I read those 2 issues, and I was like, man, like I hear Ryan North's doing. I haven't read the new issues yet.
It's good.
Since the
Ryan's
reboot,
a very
he's super talented. But at the same time, I was like, man, like I was like, you could, I don't know, like you have the chops, like you could do it. You have that first family like vibe in your bones.
Thank you. That I take that as a huge compliment. And yeah, it's funny because when Tom approached me about doing Fantastic Four, Tom Brevoort's my editor on Savage Avengers, and he's the Fantastic Four editor and also the Moon Knight editor, which is what got me in Black, White, and Blood, and the Avengers editor in general, which also got me Avengers Unlimited. So I've done the majority of my Marvel work under Tom, and I'll work with him for as long as he'll have me. He's the best editor I've ever had. But when he approached me about Fantastic Four, he said, we're doing 2 issues for X Judgment Day. And what's funny is like he and I kind of were on the same wavelength almost immediately, that we both were like, it needs to be a Sue story. I feel like she's the character who often gets overlooked, which, is sort of an irony given her powers. But I felt like she's the character that represents Judgment Day to me. If this is a story about faith and higher powers, what is faith if not a force that you cannot see but inevitably can feel? And that's the Invisible Woman. And also, it's funny the way that we wound up doing it. Some of it was sort of a structural conceit. Having Reed kind of locked in his think tank, trying to figure out a solve for Judgment Day. That was a result of me, asking Tom, basically, if you have giant alien people eaters attacking the Marvel universe, like Reed Richards, like is the pioneer of that thing, going back to Galactus. And so if he's not front and center in this event, then you kind of have to justify why. And I figured, well, it's Judgment Day. It's, it's 24 hours. Let's just, figure out the Fantastic Four are literally locked at home, and that's sort of what they're dealing with while the X-Men and the Avengers and the Eternals are off in the spotlight. But even then, 40 pages to tackle all that. It was very much okay, I only have a limited amount of page real estate. And so I was counting out the pages saying, okay, I can devote, 12 pages an issue to Sue, and I can give like another, 4 to Johnny, and I can give another, 2 or 3 to Ben, and, and then have like, 1 to 3 pages of Reed. And that was sort of like, okay, well then, Reed's going to be the narrator, and that way he has a presence that doesn't eat into my page count. And that's often the way that I wind up tackling these scripts is, I think the big limitation, which I like working against, is, you have a finite amount of pages to tell your story, and you have a finite amount of room in each page to tell those stories. And that very quickly, you get a sense of what your structure is, and then you figure out ways to kind of layer your story that, you cut things out where they're not needed, and you figure out how do I stack things on top of each other to kind of make the storyline work. And there's all sorts of cool like tips and tricks and tools to do that. Comics, the narrative captions are a great way to do that. I consider that sort of like an extra audio track, so to speak. But yeah, that, the jump cuts, like you were talking about with Savage Avengers, you quickly find out your rhythm, because I have a story to tell, and this is the runway I have in which to do it. How do I stack it to make that happen?
Nice. Yeah. So I loved that Reed was so present
Yeah.
without being present. Right.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
again, like shout out to you as a writer, because you just really had a knack for his voice.
He was
And
so hard to write.
I bet. Well, I've those two issues, man. I even off the success of like everybody loving Savage Avengers, and like, you're at Marvel and you're
Yeah.
here, and they have faith in you. Like, I would be terrified. That's just, just like, if like that's like a dream, right? You're like, ooh, like I want to write X-Men, or I want to write the Avengers, or I want to do this thing, and then you get it, and you're like, oh shit, now I have to do it, right? And the Fantastic Four are that's the first family. That's this iconic property at Marvel, and like you said, you have 40 pages. And not only that, 40 pages in a crossover tie-in. So
Yeah.
like you have things working against you, right? Because already a lot of us, especially with Marvel, I love Marvel, I love the big events. A
Yeah.
lot of the tie-ins sometimes are,
It's easy to overlook a tie-in. I totally get
yeah,
it. I get that.
and so like, if all Marvel tie-ins for their big events were as handled as delicately and beautifully and wonderfully as your Fantastic Four 2 issues were, like, I would not bat an eye at paying $150 or whatever the cost is when you have to buy, like, 20 to 40 issues for a big Marvel event, right? And so
Sure.
yeah, you just did it so well. And I hope in the future they give you a shot at it, because if there was a proposed like #1 Fantastic Four, like,
Yeah.
I've cut back on my variant addiction,
Sure.
but I would be hunting down. I'd be hunting
That's
down
kind
some
of you.
pricey covers if you had a F4 #1 coming out. I'd be like, I'm getting that 1 in 50. Like, that's
It's
going to be important to me.
it's a challenging book to write. I mean, it's funny. Writing Reed took me about 3 times as long as it does any other character, just because you have to write him smart.
Mhm.
And you sort of have to filter the world through his unique cocktail of like science, and philosophy, but also in this case, I really wanted to highlight, that he loves his wife. This is a
Mhm.
man whose greatest superpower is being married to the Invisible Woman, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to him, and he knows this, which I think is something that I think can occasionally be overlooked in terms of his character.
Yeah, it totally
Um,
does, because he comes off cold sometimes, because he's so smart,
exactly.
and he has to separate himself from that family life, right? So
Right.
that's one of the things I loved about this, was that it it's his voice. It's totally him. It never doesn't feel not like Reed Richards, but like when he talks about like, my success comes from the love I have for my wife, like, like,
Yeah.
fuck, that just like hit in all the feels, right? And
Yeah.
but also like, it just really worked. Like, it
Thank
was
you.
so good, man.
Well,
You
I
fucking
I
nailed
I
it.
will say, um, it's a challenging book to do. I mean, even 2 issues was a lot, and certainly I think the most technically challenging thing I've written in Marvel to date. And that's why, like, I'm so impressed with how effortlessly Ryan North has been doing it. Doing some really interesting done in one stories, for his first 2 issues, that really kind of focus on the characters, but also kind of they always present like an interesting science problem.
Mm,
And that's something that Ryan is really good at tackling. Just very witty, and just interesting, clever workarounds and ways of putting out the pages. And I'm not surprised that people have been loving his work. I mean, I feel like, we're sort of seeing a Ryan North renaissance. Anybody who read Squirrel Girl shouldn't be surprised by it, but seeing him, crushing Fantastic Four, seeing him crush Secret Invasion. I mean, those books are in incredibly good hands,
mhm.
and honestly, I love reading them. So definitely don't shed any tears on me not sticking around on Fantastic Four, because, like, honestly, um, Ryan's killing it, and if you haven't been reading it, you really should pick it up. He's doing a fantastic job. No
No,
pun
I
intended.
definitely, I still haven't read Slot's run. Like, I still have to go back and read Slot. Like, so
Yeah,
I'm behind, right? Like, I
yeah.
don't I pay the $10 a month for Marvel Unlimited, and
So it'll come
and
out.
trying to catch up. How And be honest, how salty and irritated are you that you did not get 2 Alex Ross covers for your Fantastic Four?
Listen, I'll never be mad because first off, Cafu did
No,
such,
they're both great covers, especially issue. I love the issue 2 cover. That's
yeah,
amazing.
those I mean Cafu did
Or 48, I
such an
guess.
amazing job on those mink. I've been a Cafu fan since his work on Thunder Agents back in the day. So like seeing those covers, I mean they're some of my favorite covers that I've gotten at Marvel. And then Russell Dauterman did an amazing variant with Sue Storm. That Russell's just a one of a kind talent. What I wouldn't do to work with him on interiors. So like I can't complain. Also, my very first Marvel comic, like I got a John Romita Jr. variant, and
You did.
yeah,
That's cool.
John, he did a Savage Avengers cover, and John is, he's an artist that I grew up with. Daredevil, The Man Without Fear was like such a seminal book for me, as a fan and as a creator, and his run with JMS on Spider-Man, with Scott Hanna inks is just I think the best the character's ever looked, and so yeah, I'll never complain about the about the covers I got. The fact that Lionel Yu did our first 7 covers on Savage Avengers, just main covers, I mean, feels incredibly lucky to me. And so I always say anytime that there's something I really want at Marvel, I always just say, well, if I keep my head down and I do the work, eventually it'll happen. And so far that mindset has not let me down. So one day.
No, it's and I, like I said, I really love the Fantastic Four 48 cover with the building and everything.
Yeah, that was
and
did
Sue,
such a
like
great job.
Sue, like all prominent, like but it is, I did notice how and it kind of, I think it kind of started with Full Circle, which I
Yeah.
bought but still haven't read, but like Alex Ross has adjusted his color palette magnificently, and we really see that in the in North's first issue. It's he's like, he's using this because he's very, Alex Ross is very rooted in realism, right? And human, and everything is so human and real and photorealistic. And the new Fantastic Four covers are like vibrant neon, and like
Yeah.
it's just so cool. And so yeah,
It's a cool evolution. He did that a lot in Full Circle as well. And it's you're right. It's a really interesting way for Alex to kind of reinvent himself, while still kind of staying true to the foundations of his style. Yeah, that's a really good observation. And I think, yeah, it's like you'll always have like original. I mean, Alex Ross has decades of brilliant, one of a kind work in the rear view, and then seeing him kind of like try new things and play around now, it is the best of both worlds.
And and not only, I like I said, like when I talked earlier about how great creatives take great risks, and Savage Avengers doesn't read like a lot of what I've read from you. I find you in it, right? Because especially because I know you're writing it, I'm familiar with your stuff, but like especially in Savage Avengers, the way you narrate it, and it's very like lofty and poetic and dreamlike kind of, and it sort of feels like older Marvel properties, but
It's very
not as
bonded.
like, not as wordy and annoying. Like, and I love, I'm terrible at this because I try and go back and read like historical, like, or not, well, I guess they're historical, but like, read like, older comics that are 40, 50 years old, and they are there. It's trying sometimes. Like I respect what they're doing, but it just doesn't flow as well as modern comics do. And so it was cool to see you like touch on that, but also like still like really like, even when you slow it down in the exposition, then you like propel us like lightning through the next scene. It was like you had this like cool juxtaposition and kind of homage to like stories past that I really picked that up in Savage Avengers and thought it was very cool.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's very much. I think some of that came out of, just like having Reed as a narrator kind of came out of necessity. Having a narrator in Savage Avengers, absolutely. Like we I always laugh. When I was putting the team together, Tom really, Tom said, my advice would be have Conan Deathlock and 5 characters, and I said, sure, I can do that if Cloak and Dagger count as a 5th character. And it's one of those things. And since then, now I've added in Punisher 2099 and Doom 2099, and Ultron. It's one of those things. I'm really enjoying what I've done with these characters. But like Tom was right. Like it is a lot to kind of cram in together. And it's one of those things looking back. I know now Marvel does a lot of 30-page issue number ones, and at the time I was kind of so new and green, I didn't ask if that would be the case. That might have been helpful if I had asked and they had acquiesced. But as a result, like I was kind of like, I have to cover a lot of ground in a very limited amount of space, and I wanted to make sure that the Savage Avengers, like their assembly, was as organic as possible. That's why we had this whole story about the Mad Bomb and sort of these characters. These are the characters that were able to kind of shake off the synthetic bloodlust because they're all dealing with their own inner demons already.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, having that narrator was kind of a good way to bring readers up to speed if they don't know who these characters are and what their relationships are to each other. I do feel like I came up with like a really cool idea with the narration that we'll be sort of digging into a little bit more in future issues. But yeah, it was very much, honestly, it came out of necessity. It was sort of, I can't do the purely cinematic, no captions thing for a book like this. Like it would, no one would have any context and they'd be like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I think you could have done that book exactly as written without the captions, and people would have just been like, I don't get it.
It would have been tough.
And so this was sort of a way to kind of help readers connect the dots in a more organic way, but also to kind of do an homage to those Bronze Age comics. Having Conan in the book, I feel like there is sort of an expectation to kind of have that kind of language. Otherwise it doesn't feel like a Conan book. And that was sort of the balance that I was really trying to strike with Savage Avengers. Is on the one hand, like, I wanted to have my own Marvel team. I mean, this is an
time out real quick. How cool is that to say? I wanted to have my own Marvel team, quote unquote. David Pepose, like
I honestly, it's been almost 15 years. I mean, our book came out. It was right around the 10th anniversary of the first Avengers movie. So this has been a long time coming. I've been thinking about stuff like this for over a decade. When I was teaching myself how to write scripts, I did fan scripts. That was sort of, you write what you love. Like it's a great. I think writing fan scripts, as long as you don't like try to send them to editors, unsolicited.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that, and don't send them to creators unsolicited because they legally cannot take it. They will delete it immediately for legal protection. But like my fan scripts, I had an Avengers team that had Daredevil, Cloak and Dagger in it. So it's kind of
nice.
It's kind of cool to go full circle with that. Like everything that I've been doing with Dagger, in terms of sort of, saying, well, if she can create light daggers, what other light constructs can she make? And if she's absorbing life force with these daggers, like maybe she can redirect it as a healer.
Yeah. You made her so much cooler, by the way. Like I like that. I'm not super familiar with Cloak and Dagger, but like I really liked the agency that you gave Dagger. And also just like, like the bow and arrow and the healing touch and her interaction with Antivenom and like fucking love this book, man.
Thank you.
I really like Savage Avengers. It's so good.
I've wanted that love triangle since 2009. I will say, when I wrote it, my fan scripts, the love triangle was with Nova.
Okay.
Because when I was writing those, Flash Thompson was not even a superhero yet. But Flash, I think fits very nicely
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of similar reasons. Um, but yeah, I mean, it blows my mind to think that in 2022 that I managed to launch 2 different Avengers books in the same year.
Yeah.
That is just, I think if I could go back in time a decade and when I'm sitting there at the midnight showing of Avengers, being like, in 10 years you will be doing this twice. It blows my mind. And it's an amazing way to start a career at Marvel. Yeah, I mean, it's just it can be a little intimidating at times. It can, and you just sort of have to take a step back and just say, if they wouldn't offer it to you if they didn't think you could deliver, and then just what's the best story that you can tell with the experience you have and the skills you have, and that's
Mm.
something that um, I think kind of helps me navigate some of the anxieties of being a creator from book to book. Is you know, I'm never gonna. I like to think that I'm a better creator than I was 5 years ago with my first book, and I'm sure 5 years from now I will be a better creator than I am now. And so my feeling is: have I left 110% on the field? Have I tried something different? Have I done something that honestly, kind of the stress test is can I describe this quickly? Is this a concept that 5 years from now I'll be able to describe? And if I can, if that I usually don't pitch it if I can't do that. But
Mm.
I know that 5 years from now I'll be like, oh yeah, Die Hard in the Baxter Building, you know, uh, Sword and Sorcery, Terminator in the Hyborian Age, um, followed by Terminator 2 in the year 2099. Like I think the way that I kind of frame those concepts makes them feel a little more evergreen to me.
Mm.
And yeah, I feel like as long as I'm trying something different, I feel like I'll never be ashamed of the work I put out, even if 5 years from now I'm hopefully putting out much better work than I am now.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, and I'm not just saying this because
Yeah,
you're we're we talk sometimes too
yeah,
outside of stuff, and you've been like you've always been very kind to me as like a reviewer, podcaster's nerd, and but I see it, man. Like I loved your first stuff, but you're getting better. You're getting I mean, you started great, but you're escalating into a place where you can throw your voice kind of right, and
yeah,
you're trying new things and
yeah.
and succeeding, which is so cool. So yeah, like I can't wait to see where you are 5 years from
Thank you.
now. I do want to ask
Yeah.
the Marvel Infinite, the
Yeah.
digital only stuff. Like,
Yes.
is that deadline pacing stuff like that? Is it different to kind of write for that?
Yeah.
Also
It's
structure, like when you think about their digital layout and page turns are sometimes different with guided
it's
view,
very
like
different.
is that like is that a clusterfuck when you're scripting
No,
that out?
I actually I love it. I mean, I'm writing some more stuff on Unlimited that hasn't been announced yet. So I'm in the middle of that right now. And no, actually, in certain ways, Unlimited is a little easier for me.
Hmm,
I don't. I feel like I am still working on how to best leverage the format of the Infinite Scroll, and I'm actually I'm outlining something right now that I hope that if my editors like it and the artist we're able to kind of find that groove, I think we'll really kind of cement that in a way that I don't know if I've gotten to yet on my other Unlimited work. But I think in general, you're operating on a smaller page count.
mhm,
In fact, the way that I write it, I don't even write it page wise because there's no page turn.
yeah,
I write it just in terms of panels. I usually try to do everything. The scripts I've turned in, I try to shoot for the 40 to 42 panel mark,
okay,
knowing that like there are inserts or there are split screens or triple split screens. Um, but I think what's helpful to me in that regard is when you're writing for a print comic, you have to say, all right, I have X amount of pages to tell this story, but not only that, I only have X amount of real estate per page. And so you have to, for me anyway, I have to really agonize, like, okay, I only have 4 to 6 panels on this page, and I need to have a certain amount of splash pages, or splash pages with like a letterbox on the top and or bottom, so my artist doesn't kill me. Whereas for Unlimited, it's really just, okay, I have 40 to 42 beats to fit in this chapter. And so that does take a lot of the guesswork out of it for me. I think also you do have a reduced word count. And so that's something that like I have to kind of work extra hard to fit in. But I mean, my Unlimited scripts often come much faster as a result, because I'm not having to agonize about the panel placement. And I'm not really writing with narrative captions. You don't really have room for that. I tend to use info captions if I'm doing something with like an Avengers team, for example, where like you have a bunch of characters, and so you want to do like a quick, pithy way of introducing everybody. But no, I really enjoy it, and I feel like it is. I understand is the Infinite Scroll as a way of telling the story, I think, is overlooked at the big two, and I think DC's doing some interesting stuff, you know, with their webtoon line. Although I think that is it is targeted towards the webtoon audience. So I think the stories are not what you would be reading in like a normal big two setting. You know, it is very much, and I don't say this to denigrate it, it's not at all, but it's very much, you can see it is a webtoon story that is using the DC licensed characters.
Yeah, definitely.
Versus a DC story that is told in the webtoons format. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been chasing in my Unlimited work. And like I said, I really love the way that like Avengers: The Black Ledger came together. I feel like and I think this is because like this was my first time writing for Unlimited, and I imagine Fareed Karami and Alan Robinson and David Tinto, who did the art on it, I imagine this was probably their first times working on Unlimited as well. So like we're still kind of figuring out the format a little bit. So I think it was a well-told story. I wish that we had leveraged the Infinite Scroll format more. And like I said, I'm working on some more stuff now that if it all works out, I think hopefully we'll leverage that even more. But it's a really interesting format, and one that I think actually streamlines itself really nicely in the scripting stage. And it's something that I really hope catches on with the readership. And if anybody's interested, actually, you can look up the first chapter of Avengers Unlimited that I wrote with Cap and Iron Man. That is free on the Marvel website. So if you Google that, you'll be able to kind of check out what we're doing.
Oh, cool.
See if it speaks to your interests.
Yeah, because I remember when they relaunched the Marvel Unlimited app. And both, I tell people all the time, like both Marvel and DC, their apps, their services are absolutely phenomenal. And like, especially when you realize how expensive comic books get if you try and stay up to date, right? And you know, I think it's what, 3 months, 3 months Marvel drops it, or 6
Something
months,
like that.
3 or 6 months.
Yeah,
but it feels like when they relaunched the app and they dropped this Infinite deal, like they put out so many Infinite comics like all at once, right? It was like almost intimidating, and it was like, wow, there's so much, and now they keep putting more out. Like, is it a struggle to get noticed? And again, like you are better than most at reminding your audience, like, hey, I've got these books here that you need to check out, whereas like some people do and don't do that. But there's just like it seems like every time I open the app, I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I did like there's a Jeff book. I love Jeff the Land Shark, and I didn't really know about that until they announced that they were going to print it now, right? Like they're going to, and I was like, what? I was like, how did I miss this? And I like to think I'm fairly in tune. I mean, I can't, no one can keep track of everything, right? I'm solo. I don't have like a team of minions to be like, you cover this and you cover that. But do you feel like it's a struggle to stand out in that digital territory?
I think it's different. It's different. I think the objective feels different to me. I think when it comes to like a print comic, you have to figure out like, all right, how do I get the word out? How do I get people to pre-order it so we can, make sure that the book doesn't get canceled?
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that like the retailers get fed and all that. Whereas I think for Marvel Unlimited, I think it is meant to have content to further justify the app. Like, the app has all the back issues that are coming out, so people can sort of stay abreast of what's going on, albeit a little bit later than the Wednesday Warriors. But I think, they, similar to like HBO Max, you want to have some content that is exclusive to the app to make sure that like there's a reason for people to go on there. And I think for that, I think it's just casting a wide net is what matters the most. For me, I consider myself really fortunate because like I know that yes, every week there will be another Avengers Unlimited chapter up. But for anybody who reads that chapter and wants to start from the beginning, I'm number one. I'm 1 through 6. And and you've seen that like there's ways to discover, like I saw that they had some Avengers Unlimited stuff. They had a story that was like a Black Panther Namor team up that came out right around Wakanda Forever. So there are ways to kind of hook things on a time peg, as far as multimedia is concerned. But I think it's ultimately the objectives are different. Like, I'm not going to get the book canceled because I'm contracted for, a 6-chapter arc, and then it's off to the next people. And on top of that, like, so I think it's if my work happens to be the thing that's noticed, great. But it's evergreen. There's going to be inevitably people who, are going to, binge, whether it's Jeff the Land Shark or, or Spider-Verse Unlimited or whatever, that, they might read the whole thing and then eventually they read your stuff. And it pops up. I mean, is it, I treat it like, any sort of balanced breakfast. Like, of course, like I'm not saying I don't want to do, print books, but it's kind of, it's a nice way to sort of have something on the side going. And it's a nice way to, I mean, I'm still kind of swinging for the fences. I mean, when I pitched this thing for Avengers Unlimited, I was very much like, I would have pitched this if I, for a print Avengers run. I will say the shorter chapters though are helpful because I think it really focuses you, like we were able to kind of do like an old school Justice League story where we had 3 chapters, each with a different pairing of Avengers. And then we had a 4th chapter that kind of tied it all together. And then chapters 5 and 6, the Avengers are back together and we're splitting them up into different pairs. And that's something that's a little similar to something I'm working on now, where it's sort of like that, but with a different kind of twist. But I think it lends itself almost like like an anthology format. You can do a one-off thing. Jim Zub did a really interesting one with Leo Romero, or is a day in the life of Jarvis the Butler. Where like that's not really a story that might necessarily like justify like a print thing, although maybe like it could be a cool backup story if you did like an anniversary issue. But I think for the format of Unlimited, you're like, oh, that's like a cool little one-off, where it's like really well made and it's really beautifully drawn and it feels really heartfelt. And I don't think anybody's going to gripe about like, oh, well, no one's going to gripe about any particular story being worth the full subscription, because that's the subscription, is you get a whole bunch of different stories. But it's kind of one of those, it becomes an all you can eat buffet. And you're not saying, oh, well, I paid $15 for a mozzarella stick, but you're like, oh, I got the mozzarella stick and I got the fried ravioli and I got the onion rings. And like, any one of these things on their own, yeah, of course you wouldn't be thrilled just buying, an onion ring for $15, but with all these things combined, you're like, oh yeah, I paid $15 for the all you can eat buffet. And that was kind of rad.
Okay. I gotcha. All right. So you mentioned real quick a while back that you're working on fulfillment for OZ2. And I know you had some hiccups there, and I know you posted recently the Man-House cover. You got those back in. They're all good.
Yes.
So you're doing all this by yourself still. Like you still use a fulfillment center.
Yes, I am a one-man fulfillment center, which, that's probably the only big challenge at this point is I got to juggle deadlines on top of getting people books that they paid for, and so that is a little bit of a challenge, and it's one that I'm just kind of tackling one day at a time,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's one of those things. Things are a little crazy as far as publishing in general is concerned. We had some hiccups as far as our printer was concerned that were totally unavoidable, without having a crystal ball. But for those who aren't aware, their paper shortages have been a
Mm.
huge thing in the publishing industry since the pandemic, and it's because a lot of the wood pulp, which ordinarily would go towards paper products, they're going towards cardboard for shipping for places like Amazon. And so, finding paper is difficult. Our printer, Comic Impressions, they had a mechanical issue with their printing press, and so the way that the way the printing presses work is they have CMYK plates. So cyan, yellow, magenta, and I don't remember what K stands for. It's not black, but it's basically black. And what happened was they had a mechanical issue with the yellow plate, and so they basically, the plates need to be at a specific spot when they're putting down the paper, and this plate was kind of shaking a little bit. And so what would happen is, the pages were coming out blurry, or sometimes there'd be just a page that just didn't have the yellow at all. And it was one of those things. The printer didn't catch that before they shipped it, and so I got the books. I noticed it immediately. The printer was very nice about it, and they were like, "Of course, we'll make this right. We're going to get this printed as soon as we can." It's just, again, they're dealing with paper shortages. Everything's a little bottlenecked. And then they printed our books, and Hurricane Ian hit.
Yeah.
They're based in Fort Myers, Florida, and thank goodness none of the books were affected by the hurricane. But of course, it took a little longer to ship because their warehouse had been damaged, and they were still they were literally like digging out of there were books that were damaged by all this. And then we had a slight hiccup with one of our variant covers. Honestly, it was a mechanical thing. They fed in a page out of order. So we were just waiting for them to reprint it and send it our way. But thankfully that all arrived this week or last week. And I finally got a chance to go through all of them and confirm that they're all good to go. But yeah, it's just packing and shipping, and just trying to juggle a couple very breaking deadlines while I'm doing it. And it's a process. My partner Claire, unfortunately had some medical stuff over the summer. She got blood clots in her leg post COVID. Oh, no. So that sort of also is kind of that adds to slow down. Is we got to juggle medical appointments, and there's only sort of so much that she can lift, just because of her mobility is still a little impacted. So it's a process. I mean, thankfully, it's a little easier to do than the first time we did this, because I know how it works. It's just honestly, it's just man hours. It's just literally just packing and sorting and shipping, and it takes a lot out of the best of us.
Yeah.
So it is.
Well, and your last Kickstarter did well too. So it's like it's great that you have all these backers, right? But then when you're packing and sorting and shipping, you're I have to fulfill all these orders.
I think we're shipping upwards of 650 packages.
Wow.
Of varying degrees of complexity. So I like I said, the books exist. I promise they're coming. This is not a matter of, I want to assure everybody, it is certainly not do the books not exist? Is the guy taking the money and running? No, not even in the slightest. I've got, I think it's 25 boxes of singles, plus the trades of other books, and it is just a matter of packing them. It's one of those things. When I had done the Kickstarter based on the original timing, I was like, this would have been a perfect timing for me to do a bunch of packing and shipping. And unfortunately, just the realities of post-pandemic world kind of thwarted that schedule a little bit.
Yeah.
And so now I'm packing them sort of in the midst of wrapping up some breaking deadlines. So it'll happen. It'll come out. The books exist. They look great. And I apologize for anybody who's waiting. I swear it's all coming in. It's just me shipping all of them at this point. So any complaints, feel free to send them to me, and I promise the
It
books
hasn't been that long. I've
they look
definitely
great.
waited
They're
longer
coming.
on other Kickstarters.
I feel awful that it is taken this long, and again, sort of everything with the printer has sort of made things challenging. On top of just like I'm lucky enough to have a bunch of deadlines, but it's also I have a bunch of deadlines.
Yeah, you got shit
and
to do.
I don't want to put anybody out. I'm sorry.
No, but yeah,
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying you got shit to do. Like you got other stuff. But
yeah,
but still, like I said,
it
hasn't been that long. It really had. Like I just was asking because I knew I just can't imagine like dealing with Marvel deadlines and then like, oh, I have like 5 extra minutes. Let's pack all these Kickstarters.
Yes, that is what a lot of creators tell me. And yeah, it's coming together slowly but surely. But yeah, it's definitely. I'm going to be real glad when I've done that. In part because then we can like start also thinking about the next Kickstarter. Because Ruben Rojas is doing some terrific work on the next issue, and also just some more other Kickstarter things that I want to do after that. So
cool.
Yes, this will continue to be a thing for as long as Kickstarter is a viable platform. I love the platform. I want to do more with it. I love our Kickstarter backers. So I don't want anybody to ever feel like, oh, he's Marvel now. He's not going to fulfill his obligations to Kickstarter. On the contrary, I plan on doubling down on the platform in 2023 and beyond.
Awesome. Well, hey, that's cool, man. Because I was kind of wondering that, like, just I mean, I didn't think you were like. I don't think that you would put the mentality out that like, well, I'm above this now. But
No.
With all these opportunities you're having at Marvel, like it takes up time, right? And and you also have, you have your partner, you have your dog, you have a life on top of all this other shit, right? So like, you gotta, just like we talked about earlier, like burnout is real and you have to be careful and give yourself time to live and breathe and enjoy yourself, right? So yeah, I was kind of wondering what your independent comic book making would be like after all this, because I mean, I like, when you're getting to like play in the Marvel sandbox, like that's got to be distracting too, when you're like, oh, like they're giving me like this digital Avengers book, and oh, I have Savage Avengers, and like, oh, they gave me 2 issues on Fantastic Four, and it's like, and you're killing it, you're doing all these things well. And so like, if Marvel has any sense in them, like they're going to keep offering you these like cool little nuggets, right, to like to play with.
Well, and for me, I everybody has told me this, and I firmly agree, is like you want to have a balanced breakfast, so to speak. I love doing Marvel work. I want to continue doing Marvel work, but I also want to make sure that I'm still doing independent work as well. And so my goal is to do something, an original series every year if I can. And actually I do have something coming next year. I don't know the specific date yet, but I have my first horror series is supposed to come out next year. It was supposed to actually come out this year, but we had some artist scheduling stuff that had to push it to next year. But I'm very excited about that. And more OZ for sure. So I'll make up for lost time next year. But yeah, I definitely want to keep that up. I'm looking forward to Grand Theft Astro. For that to see the light of day.
Yeah.
Either through Kickstarter or through a publisher. We're sort of in discussions about that right now. And I do have a few other original things that I've been chipping away at that we'll hopefully have some conversations about that in the next year or two to come. But yeah, I like I say, keeping busy is it's the best thing that you can hope for in this business.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really fortunate to be very busy since last July. And I hope that continues. I really and I'm excited to see, you know, not just like what other like licensed things that like I can get thrown at me. Although of course I'm happy to tackle just about anything. Um, but also just I want to keep stretching myself as a creator, and I think original work is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
You know, playing around in different genres, playing around with different tones, and just I think for me it's just really figuring out, like you said, I have a finite amount of time. And so it's really just kind of making sure that I focus on projects that are worth that time. And you know, I have there have been things that I've pitched that in you know that I've thought afterwards, like, oh, you know, is that really going to be worth like 6 months of my time?
Mm.
If not, maybe kind of shelve that. And and I think that's where kind of doing stuff at the big two has been really useful, is that um, having that framework of a licensed character, and then you're sort of able to throw in kind of a high concept adventure around that. It kind of does become greater than the sum of its parts
Yeah.
a bit. And so I think that has been kind of useful in keeping those muscles limber. And but I'm really kind of excited to keep growing as an independent creator as well. And so, like I said, more cool stuff coming in 2023. I'm about 2/3 finished through this horror series now. And I'm very excited for readers to get to check it out. It's with an all new publisher that I haven't worked with before. But I've worked with this editor before, and very excited to be riding shotgun with them again.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you got cards up your sleeves, man. Because anything with your name on it, I buy, I read, I love. Well, I love, you know, no pressure. I've loved, you know, just you got to keep it. You got to keep it going. I got two more quick, very important questions.
Yeah.
One, coming off of Fantastic Four, Die Hard in the Baxter Building. It's December. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Yes. Yes.
I don't. If you said no,
I don't know how
there's any no, I was never going to interview again.
It's set at a Christmas party. How is it not? You know, there's all the Santa references. Like, anybody who doesn't think that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, I assume it's because it's in Los Angeles and there's no snow in Los Angeles, which, like, I live in LA. Like, it's almost a statistical impossibility. But yes, it is 100% a Christmas movie, and I would fight anybody who says otherwise.
Nice. I also love how you had Sue say "yippee-ki-yay." Like, oh
yes,
my god,
she said the thing.
So good.
She said the thing. I also liked our little nod to ho ho ho. Now I have a shotgun.
Yeah.
That was that part. And people, I feel like that was the moment that everybody seems to talk about with that is Sue busting out of a Kree pocket battlefield using the severed head of a mindless one. I was like, yeah, that's if that's the legacy I go out on with Fantastic Four, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, it was a cool, it was a great moment. And then finally, with all your success so far at Marvel and more to come, but just how you've just rooted yourself already as like a powerhouse storyteller. What's like your dream Marvel gig? Like, what property at Marvel are you like salivating at the mouth for? I said salivating at the mouth. Where else would you salivate? Let's not go there. Let's not go.
I don't know. You know, I there are a lot of characters that I would love to tackle at some point. You know, I'd love to do more Moon Knight. Doctor Strange is a great one. I saw that Jed McKay is relaunching it, and couldn't be in better hands. Jed is such a fantastic writer.
I just started his Magic series. I want to get caught up to read Rich's new issue, and now I have 21 issues to read. It's good.
You know, I anything Avengers related, I love writing the Avengers. So
do you like team books? Like, do you like team books over solo titles? You think?
You know how like they have the scientific theory that like everything evolves to the shape of a crab. Like, for me, it's like everything evolves to the shape of an ensemble book. Like I pitched something recently that didn't make it across the finish line, but I'm still very happy with that pitch. And it was definitely, it was something for an individual character that like very quickly morphed into an ensemble thing. So I love ensemble characters or ensemble books. Spider-Man, I'd love a crack at Spidey. I feel like I've written 2 Spider-Man already with Miles Morales and Anti-Venom. So I would love to tackle something with Pete. But yeah, I mean, honestly, Iron Man would be kind of fun. I keep seeming to want to write genius characters, even though I've already said on the record that writing genius characters
it's hard.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, I firmly believe that there are like no bad characters at Marvel. I really, I can probably think on like one hand the number of characters that I don't think I would have like an angle for. But I think it's just what kind of swing does an editor want to take on it. But yeah, I mean, I was just talking with a buddy the other day about like, if I had, what would I do if I had like the new Warriors? Like, I mean, that's sort of what I do when I'm not writing is I just daydream about what else I would be writing. And Marvel is such a great place to do that. And I'm sure DC is as well. I haven't done any work with them. But that's the cool thing about playing in the big 2 sandbox is like there's so much history, and that's great to draw from, but it's even better to remix. And so that's the kind of thing that I hope to keep doing at Marvel for the long haul. And as far as I know, I mean, well, as far as I know, that makes it sound like I'm not sure about it. I know I have stuff with them through next year that's going to be very exciting and kind of stays true to that remix ethos. Cool. Yeah, beyond that, it's whatever the editors hit me up for. I'll tackle any of it.
Well, it sounds like 2023 is going to be a good year for David Pepose, so I'm excited for that. I've kept you for a while, and I appreciate. I always love talking to you, man. You hype me up. You make me excited about comic books again. And you have a really great attitude. You're very humble, and it's a good reminder for a lot of us that like hard work really does. Sometimes I feel like and I know other people feel like it too. Like sometimes people get in that like sad, lonesome spot where it's like hard work doesn't always pay off, but like then you get that reminder, and I see like what you've done over the last couple of years, and like hustling does matter. Hustling can pay off. It can get you where you need to be. It can give you opportunities you never thought you would get, and it's so cool to see that happening for you right now. You totally deserve it. I'm a huge fan. Like I really do love your stories. I said it before, but that Pepose charm you infuse into your narratives, like there's nothing like it on the shelves right now. And I'm really hoping that with Savage Avengers Volume 1, which comes out today, which you can buy anywhere, and you totally should. If this is your first time interacting with David's David's writing and storytelling, like you're in for a treat. If you're used to his indie stuff, you're still in for a treat. Like Savage Avengers Volume 1 is great. It's a wonderful, like on top of being a great team book, it's a great Conan story. So if you love Conan, you really should check it out. It's so cool. Are you gonna sell some of these on your shop, like signed?
Yeah,
if anybody wants
them. I have to update it. But yes, I will add that to my web store soon. And yeah, also, if you're at your local comic shop today, Savage Avengers number 8 is also out, our latest issue. So if you want to catch up on the whole series, this one's a doozy. It's going to end on quite the surprising note. You're going to be getting really mad at me, wondering when issue 9 is coming out. So definitely do not miss issue 8 if you've been reading anything that we've been doing. This one's the game changer. I've been waiting for this issue to come out for months. So don't miss it because it's going to knock your socks off.
That's great, because that's how I felt after reading 7. Like at the end of 7, I was like, whoa! So
this is going to make 7 seem real quiet.
That's awesome.
This is when you read it let me DM me. Let me know what you think, because I've been itching for this one for a long time.
That is exciting news. Well, David, the polite podcast host that I am, this is where I want everybody to know like where to follow you. Like or like Hive is kind of in a weird place right now. It's not working, but like Substack. I almost said Mongoose, Mastodon. Where do we keep track of you at?
I'm at Twitter and Hive at Pepose D. And Instagram at Pepose D. I'm at David Pepose Comics on Facebook. You can subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/Pep News. I got to write an update for that very soon. It's been a minute. But Twitter is still where I'm most active, at least for now. So follow me there. But also, if you want to follow me, tell your local comic shop to add any David Pepose books to your pull list. That would be a great way to follow me.
Yes.
But yeah, no, thank you so much for having me, buddy. I'm glad we got to catch up, and thanks as always for your support. It really means a lot.
Oh man, I'm happy to. Like I said, I love your work. I love your vibe and your books and stuff, and you're just a cool dude. I'm really glad. Really, this is the third time we've chatted on 2 times on my podcast, once on another, but every time, man, like I said, I walk away feeling better, so I don't care what anybody else thinks. It's good for me. It's like free therapy.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm so excited. You just made me more excited for like Savage Avengers 8. So I didn't realize that came out next Wednesday too. That's awesome.
Yes, it does. And it game changer is the only word I can use to describe it.
Very cool. And also, like, has Titan reached out to offer you a spot to write Conan? Because now that they have, because like I feel like they should.
Not yet. But you know, I mean, I really enjoyed writing Conan's Farewell to the Marvel Universe, and but you know, I'd never say no for another crack at him.
Yeah, I thought you handled his voice well, and I don't want to spoil too much for Volume 1, but like how it ends. How Volume 1 ends and how Conan goes back to his barbarian ways, I thought was just beautiful and wonderful. And the timeliness of it, like what happens after that, like how it kind of like set the stage for other stuff. Like I was like, that was really smart. So anyways, I don't know if you guys could pick it up or not, like after this hour and a half chat. I am a big David Pepose fan. He has great comics that you should buy. Savage Avengers, totally worth your time. If you got Marvel Unlimited, you need to check out his Avengers tale on that. If you don't have Marvel Unlimited, it's a pretty solid $10 a month. Not gonna lie, it's a great way to keep track of Marvel comics and to read some. If you know, not everybody can afford those $100 omnibuses that come out every now and then, and this is a great way to read some Marvel back issues, to read some newer stuff. It's very cool. David, again, man, thank you so much. It's December. Happy holidays. If you're going to do any traveling, like, you know, safe travels and all that. And I wish you and your partner and your dog, like, I hope all of you have a great holiday and Happy New Year, sir.
Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your weekend.
I'll try. We're having fried chicken and watching the Chiefs, so it can't be that bad.
Can't be that bad. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. Have a good one, David.
You too.